The humble black maid was forced to bring her baby daughter to work, and the millionaire's reaction shocked everyone. No one imagined that an ordinary cleaning woman could alter the trajectory of a multi-million-dollar mansion in America. That morning, after a night's rain had rinsed the working-class streets, Gabrielle Brooks, a black woman, a single mother, carried 11-month-old Helena onto the first bus of the day. The community daycare was closed for lack of staff. The neighbors were busy, and her job at Santoro Mansion hung by a thread. In her tiny rented room, she had scrubbed the floor with cheap soap, laid out a clean sheet, prepared a warm bottle. The red bow she pinned to Helena's curls was just a ribbon salvaged from an old dress, yet when tied, it lit up the baby's little face. "I'm sorry, but you have to come with me today," Gabrielle whispered. From the bus's fogged window, the city split in two worlds. One side, working-class blocks with peeling paint, cracked sidewalks, corner shops, marked cash only, and rain-soaked shoes left at thresholds. The other, Valentino Val Santoro's glass and marble estate lawns, clipped with ruler-straight precision garden lights, glowing amber security in suits gliding like shadows. Gabrielle slipped in through the back kitchen door, set Helena on a small rug, handed her a pot lid to bang, then picked up her mop bucket and rag. The floor cleaner smelled sharp and cold. Her heart beat fast with the old fear. "If I'm caught, will I lose everything you are watching, the very moment that will change 3 lives? Hit like and subscribe so you won't miss the turning point ahead." At the far end of the hallway, Val, an Italian-American businessman who had wrapped himself in silence since the death of his wife Elise, suddenly canceled his morning meetings. He told his assistant he needed to check some numbers, but the truth was the weight of loneliness pressed like armor, and he wanted to hide in the house's familiar quiet. He entered the living room marble floor, abstract paintings on the wall, white leather armchairs that looked untouched. Then a clear child's laugh rang out an alien sound in this space for years. Val froze at the doorway. On the cold marble, Helena, in her red dress, was shaking the pot lid, clapping her chubby hands in delight. The red fabric blazed like a smear of lipstick against the mansion's cool tones. Gabrielle spun around, face pale. She braced for scolding, even instant dismissal. But none of the legends of the cold boss came true. Val slipped off his coat, draped it on the armchair, and lowered himself to one knee before the child. He picked up a wooden block nearby, wiggled it in front of her. "Hey, princess." "May I play too?" Helena squealed, reaching out her milk tooth, flashing under the light. Gabrielle saw the powerful man's knees touch the polished marble, an image that inverted the entire scale of power authority, bowing down to lift someone else. That posture marked the moral pivot of the story. Val did not declare, he joined. "Not I allow laughter here, but I am part of this laughter." In a breath, the showroom living room became a playroom. Moments later, Val handed Helena his family's pocket watch to fiddle with under his watchful eye. The emblem of power was stripped of its aura, no longer a sacred heirloom, but a safe toy in a baby's hands. Gabrielle turned away to wipe her eyes, afraid someone might see her tears. "What's her name?" Val asked softly, never breaking his gaze from Helena. Helena Gabrielle answered, her voice tight with fear and gratitude. He repeated it slowly, tasting the syllables like spiced orange Helena. A strong name. Gabrielle gripped her mop handle, mustering courage. "You won't fire me, will you? I had no one to watch her today." Val lifted his eyes, and in them was a warmth he hadn't expected in himself. "You were wrong to bring a child without telling me. But if this laughter has returned here because of that wrong, then it's the most beautiful mistake I've ever seen." 3 short sentences shifted the whole house. First, he named both mother and daughter, naming as recognition. Second, he admitted the fault but redefined consequence wrong doesn't always mean punishment. Sometimes wrong creates a right that rules forget. Third, he changed the language of power from command to care. For the first time since she'd begun working there, Gabrielle no longer felt invisible. She leaned against the kitchen doorway, listening to her daughter laugh, and knew the mansion's heartbeat had changed. News of the kneeling boss spread like the smell of butter on a hot pan. Clara Mitchell, the house manager, froze at the staircase when she heard the child's laughter. Louise Carter, the chef, squinted through the kitchen door, and Jim Walker, the gardener, smiled as he glimpsed through the window a suited man sitting on the floor with a baby. The house's corridors, laundry room, lawns all began to hum with whispers. And elsewhere in the city, Bianca Hayes, Val's fiancé guardian of the image, was already on her way home. Before leaving the living room, Val spoke a line as light as a spoon set on china. "Go on with your work." I'll watch her for a few minutes. In the mansion's old dictionary, that was a grave breach. In the new one, forming, it was a beginning. From that moment, the seed of central conflict was planted: order and image, Bianca against humanity and care, the kitchen, Gabrielle, Helena, and Val himself. And as every American tale goes, the real trial would not take place in a cold boardroom, but amid the butter, sugar, orange peel warmth of the kitchen. The kitchen of an American home is its heart, where the smell of coffee blends with the sound of spoons against porcelain, where children crawl across rugs, where adults tell the truth when their voices drop. That noon, the Santoro kitchen shifted its rhythm. Helena, who had once laughed brightly in the living room, now began to doze on the rug. Gabrielle wiped the counters, glancing at her daughter, still trembling inside from the beautiful mistake that had been forgiven. Clara passed by, paused a beat longer than usual, and gave a quiet nod that seemed to say, "I saw. Stay calm." While reaching for a dry towel on the top shelf, Gabrielle's hand stopped on a tin box painted with daisies. Inside were worn, fabric-covered notebooks, their edges yellowed with time. On the cover, Elisa's Recipes, the late wife's notebook. The first page read, "Orange pound cake, cut while warm and share, immediately when the silence is heavy." Gabrielle froze. It wasn't just a recipe. It was an art of releasing heaviness through the ritual of sharing. She carefully measured flour, butter, sugar, eggs, grated orange, zest baking, exactly as written. The scent of citrus rose. Butter seeped into the cupboard, sugar melted into the memory of the house. The oven sighed like a tame beast. Helena twitched in her sleep, tiny hand grasping at the air. As Gabrielle slid the pan into the oven, Val returned, sleeves rolled, tie loosened, less CEO, more family man. Standing at the door, he half joked, half true. "Thought I dreamed of cinnamon. Turns out the house remembers how to live." They set 2 cups of coffee on the kitchen island. The imagined camera lowered. Val sat slightly below Gabrielle, inches closer enough to shift years of hierarchy. Together they opened Elisa's book. Handwritten lines: add cinnamon when life gets stiff. When silence grows heavy, cut warm, and share. Don't forget soft music when serving soup. The notebook read like a gentle constitution for the household. Elise was gone, but her handwriting remained, teaching the living how to love through food. While the kitchen warmed, the hallway buzzed. A whisper. She brought the kid to earn sympathy. Another. The house's image is ruined. The weight of being poor, black, and new clung to Gabrielle like fine dust, invisible yet suffocating. Clara whispered, "I won't tell anyone, but Bianca's on her way." Gabrielle swallowed hard. She didn't want the kitchen to become a battlefield. She only wanted one right thing: to let the house taste warm cake. The oven chimed. The orange pound cake rose golden fragrant with butter and citrus. Gabrielle sprinkled powdered sugar, cut 2 thick slices, and slid 1 plate toward Val. He lifted his fork, took a bite, closed his eyes. For a moment it felt as if Elise walked past, resting her hand silently on his shoulder. When he opened his eyes, he was no longer chairman of Santoro Holdings in a glossy magazine, but a man remembering hunger, fullness, warmth, and cold. "It's the same." "No, there's something of yours in it," he murmured. Gabriel smiled. "Maybe it's Helena. Everything I do now goes through her." Then a chill crossed the doorway. Bianca Hayes, light blazer hair, pinned neat perfume sharp, stood there, eyes flicking across the coffee cups, cake plates, the open notebook, and Helena asleep on the rug. "What a scene," she said, lips unsmiling. "I want order, not orange cake." Her voice was PR language order statements image. In the boardroom, Val might answer with charts. In the kitchen, he chose the language of home. He didn't rise, didn't hide the cake, didn't apologize. Have a slice, he offered. Bianca sat tall on a stool. Legs crossed, no, and don't mistake this a photo of you. Holding an employee's baby is not good for our image. Val set down his fork, looked her straight on. I'm relearning how to feel. And if that means changing how I run this house, then it's what should happen. You're in love. Bianca cut sharp, turning the moment into a moral strike. Val didn't smile, didn't flare, didn't play theater. He chose useful truth. I'm seeing where laughter deserves priority. It wasn't a proposal, but it was a political pledge of the kitchen to place a child's laughter at the center of household policy. Bianca faltered a breath. The grammar was foreign to her, then stood. People will talk about this. Let them. But here I decide what's respected, Val replied, voice low but firm. Bianca left her heels tapping evenly down the stone hall. The perfume she left behind could not drown the butter-orange warmth. Gabrielle cradled Helena, knowing the storm had reached the door. Val turned back, gentle. Keep cooking, rocking caring. The rest I'll learn to defend. Clara peeked in, setting a fresh towel on the shelf, hiding a damp smile. That cake, and he left for the kitchen. Gabriel nodded eagerly. Yes, and for the gardener, too. In the corner, Elise's notebook still lay open, cut while warm and share. That note instantly became the house's first new policy share, while warm before silence turns to stone. Outside, Jim Walker watered the beds, lifting his head as the orange butter scent drifted from the kitchen window. He smiled already, planning to plant lavender and rosemary by the porch, a sense of home stronger than any candle. Inside, Val scribbled a note and stuck it to a cabinet kitchen first. No one grasped its full meaning yet, but tomorrow when a leaked photo would spark debate, when a small back room would become a nap room for employees' children, everything would trace back to that butter-orange smudged scrap from today's noon. And as the orange cake dwindled to its last slice, the Santoro kitchen had secretly rewired the house's bloodstream. The language of power shifted from command to care. The center of decision-making moved from boardroom to kitchen island. Bianca's footsteps faded, but the house's breath grew warmer. On the rug's edge, Helena stirred, sighed, her tiny fist closing on empty air, as if grasping a future taking shape from a still warm slice of cake. Afternoon settled over the mansion like a thin curtain. The kitchen stayed warm, the scent of orange and butter lingering along the cupboards. Gabrielle washed dishes under running water, glancing now and then at Helena dozing on the small rug. She hummed softly a lullaby borrowed from an old church hymn playing, words just enough to let the heart unclench. Val passed by the kitchen doorway on his way to the office, but stopped. He didn't say beautiful or thank you. He simply stood listening until the final line before speaking in his husky voice. It's been a long time since this house had music. Gabrielle startled, nearly dropping the dish. I'm sorry, I was just... Don't apologize for music, he said. Dark eyes lowered, as if afraid to extinguish a fragile flame. Clara Mitchell poked her head in, whispering Miss Bianca just called. She's on her way." The word Bianca fell into the kitchen like a stone. No one said to be quiet, but the air tightened on its own. Gabrielle dried her hands, scooped Helena up, and pressed her against her chest on instinct. Bianca Hayes arrived as the sun faded. The top-shelf perfume preceded the tap of her heels. She walked into the kitchen like it was her stage scanning every detail, pausing on the lone slice of cake, then on the sleeping child. "What a curious scene," she said, voice stripped of curiosity. "This isn't a daycare. This is the Santoro house." Gabrielle straightened her back. The community daycare was closed today. There are always choices, Bianca cut in. And this was the wrong one. Dinner was set for 2, the long table empty of 8 chairs. Val polished a wine glass with a white cloth, set it down, and met Bianca's eyes. "You mentioned choice. I choose not to shame a mother for bringing her child to a place where the kitchen is safe enough to set her down." Bianca tapped her silverware. "You're being used, Val. A narrative is being built." He leaned back. "Maybe the thing that needs rebuilding is the image you're gripping too tightly." For the first time, Bianca faltered half a beat, then recovered quickly. "No one hired you to write poetry. They need you to lead." Val set down his utensils, porcelain clinking. "Today, I lead by protecting what's right in my house." Rumors didn't wait. The next morning, as Gabrielle pushed her mop cart down the hall, 2 maids whispered by the curtains. "She thinks bringing her kid earns her favors. That's crossing the line." Gabrielle heard it all sit her lip. She didn't stop, didn't cry, just scrubbed a small stain with her fingernail. Val came from the end of the corridor, his eyes passing over the 2 whisperers. He didn't scold, didn't make a show of righteousness. He only said to Gabrielle, "Walk with me." They stepped into the back garden where Jim Walker was shifting potted plants. The breeze carried the smell of wet soil. Val stood by the white fence. "They don't understand, but they will," he said, voice quiet yet firm. "What they call a mistake, I call courage. You did what you had to do to protect Helena." "I don't want to be a problem," Gabrielle said, eyes on her worn shoes. "I just want to work." "You've done more than work." Val shook his head. "You've made this house alive." It wasn't flattery. It was truth he'd just uncovered, like finding a lost key on the path. By late afternoon, Bianca gathered everyone in the living room. She stood framed by the tall glass windows, arms crossed, voice amplified like a small speaker. "This house needs order. Order doesn't include kids running our corridors." Gabrielle held Helena at the group's edge, body tense. "She's turned this place into a creche." Bianca pressed, eyes locking on Gabrielle. Unacceptable. Helena suddenly burst into tears at the strange tone, small but cutting. Gabrielle patted her back, saying nothing. Val stepped forward from behind, filling the space between hostile gazes. "Enough, Bianca." His voice was low, steady, slicing through. "This is my house, and I say a child's laughter has the same right here as any other sound." The room held its breath. Helena reached out, clutching Val's thumb. He let her hold it. If anyone thinks a child's laughter is a threat, he scanned each face. The problem might not be the child. Bianca kept her neck straight, eyes cold, fixed on Gabrielle. But this time she knew staying longer would only cost her ground. She pressed her lips tight. "Let's see how the press feels about this." Then turned on her heel. The glass door shut, reflecting a room that exhaled at once. Clara quietly moved to Gabrielle's side, squeezed her hand. "You're not standing alone," she whispered. "And not just with one." Night fell. The kitchen glowed with warm light. Miss Louise Carter brought Gabrielle a mug of warm milk, setting it on the counter. "Drink." For the nerves. Val sat on a stool by the island, Helena asleep in his arms. He spoke softly, almost to himself. "We'll do this properly." No one answered, but everyone heard. The next morning, sunlight like honey poured through the glass. Clara carried a tray into the kitchen, on it a brown envelope. "Press clipping," she said softly. Val opened it. On the printed page was a photo of him holding Helena in the garden soil, still smudged on his shirt sleeve. Gabrielle standing a little apart, her eyes bright yet cautious. The headline, cut sharp as a blade, "CEO distracted by child in mansion." What do shareholders think? Gabrielle glanced, once her chest tightening. Val laid the paper flat, smoothing an invisible crease. "They'll talk," he said. "We'll answer." He pulled his laptop toward him, setting it on the kitchen island where Elise's notebook often lay at night. The cursor blinked like a breath. He typed, "No PR, no secretary. My name is Valentino Santoro. The photo is real. This child's name is Helena. She is the daughter of Gabriel, who works in this house. This kitchen has been a place of work and reunion. We are opening a small nap room for the children of the people who keep my home standing. If you want a reason, it's simple. This house has people. People have names." He read it once, made no edits. Gabrielle stood beside him, holding Helena close, reading the words as if watching a door swing open. "It's clear," she said. Clara lifted her phone. "The back room down the hall. We'll take a photo." They walked to the far end, a small space once stuffed with junk. Clara pulled off the tarp. Miss Louise spread a soft rug Jim carried in an old borrowed rocker. Gabrielle cleared the window corner, hung a paper mobile cut from cereal boxes, red and green circles stirring in the draft. Val stood in the doorway smiling without meaning to. "The sign," Clara said. "We need a name." Gabrielle took a marker and wrote neatly in block letters, "Nap Room." In the corner she added 3 tiny initials, V. "G. H. looks right," Val said. "Now we show them." Clara snapped a photo golden light green rug, the mobile swaying the borrowed rocker, and Helena reaching for a green circle. She sent it to Val. He attached it to his post. Publish. The notification pinged softly on Clara's phone, then Ms. Louise's, then Jim's. Instantly, the kitchen turned into a command center. "I've got some cloth books my daughter doesn't use anymore," said the laundry woman peeking in. "I have my grandson's old crib added the groundskeeper soil still on his hands. I'll embroider nap room on a fabric banner for the door." Miss Louise laughed. Messages from PR office poured in. "We recommend an official statement emphasizing that the company is not responsible for unauthorized presences within private premises." Bianca called, "You're turning your home into gossip fodder. We need a properly worded release." Val, "Come to the kitchen." Bianca arrived, still sharp in her blazer eyes, calculating. She scanned the scene, Clara noting a shopping list outlet covers cabinet locks, non-slip mats. Gabrielle crouched on the floor, wiping dust from the baseboard, Helena in her lap with a wooden spoon. Val leaned on the island, no jacket sleeves rolled. "We need to talk," Bianca said, chin lifted. "All right," Val replied. "But here." "You're turning family furniture into a political manifesto," Bianca opened. "What will shareholders read between the lines? That Chairman Santoro lets children run the house is some cheap PR stunt." Val looked at her weary yet strangely relieved. "They'll read exactly what I wrote. This house has people." Bianca gave a thin smile, naive. Val shook his head. "Necessary." He held up 3 fingers reciting new rules. Kitchen rules. 1. No one is humiliated in this house. No bag checks, no blanket accusations. 2. We open a nap room so staff don't have to choose between wages and their children. 3. Anyone who can't accept it can use the door. That's an honest exit. The words fell calm, but the law of the house had been spoken. Bianca bit her lip nails, pressing into her palm until white. "You're choosing the wrong side," she said slowly. "No," Val answered. "I'm choosing my side, the side where I don't need pills to sleep or pretense to wake." No one clapped. Helena smacked the spoon on her lap and let out a giggle. Miss Louise chuckled. "I'll take that as an approval." Val's post spread. In the comments came praise, mockery, and reminders. "If you can learn this at home, bring a piece of it to the company." Val glanced at the screen, then set the phone down. "We will," he murmured, as if promising himself. Gabrielle met his eyes, nodded, said nothing more. By afternoon, Jim Walker carried in trays of lavender and rosemary. "Smell of home," he said, smiling gently. Val rolled up his sleeves, pressed his hands into soil. Dark earth smeared his wrist, blurring the line between two worlds. Clara opened the kitchen window. Breeze carried the scent of damp earth and herbs, mixing with the ghost of baked cake. Gabrielle leaned in the doorway, Helena on her hip, babbling ba-ba-ba syllables, without meaning, yet sounding like sunshine. Val's phone buzzed. Another blog had reposted the garden photo with a gentler caption, "Who taught Chairman Santoro to sit on the floor?" Beneath a comment, "If a CEO can sit down, maybe he can learn to lift up." Clara glanced at him, asking with her eyes if she should take down the link like before. Val shook his head. No. Let them see. That night, they spread a thin blanket in the nap room, tested the warm lamp. Gabrielle laid Helena on the mattress, the baby reaching for a paper circle, eyes drooping. Val stood in the doorway, tapping a quiet rhythm with his foot, one hand in his pocket, lips pressed into a smile. The small room had become the house's second heart. At the end of the hall, Bianca paused, silently snapped a photo, but this time did not post. She sent a one-line email to PR office, prepare an alternative narrative, then turned her heels, echoing steady, disappearing around the corner. In the kitchen, Ms. Louise turned off the oven. Clara folded towels, Jim pressed soil around the herb roots. Val leaned into the doorway, whispering, "Sleep well, little one." Gabrielle touched a finger to her lips, smiling, "Shh. She's learning how to belong." The nap room door stayed ajar. Warm light pooled like honey. Night air slid across the lavender beds, carrying a small promise tomorrow would be different. And somewhere very near, a ring lay silent in a small wooden box in the living room, soon to be drawn out a spark for the next storm. But that was for later. For now, the house had learned how to call its people by name. An internal chime pinged through the mansion system early in the afternoon. Bianca summoned all staff to the living room. On the table by the window lay an open velvet wooden box, empty. "The Santoro family ring," she said, voice as cold as glass. "It was here this morning. Now it's gone." Eyes flickered like startled birds. A few darted toward Gabrielle, holding Helena in her arms. "We've worked here for years," Clara said, trying to keep her tone even. "None of us, except the new one," Bianca cut in. Her gaze locked directly on Gabrielle. "She needs money. And she brought a child into this house against the rules." The air thinned fragile. Helena sensed the shift and began to whimper. Gabrielle pressed her daughter to her chest, hearing her own heartbeat pound. "I didn't take anything," she said, voice trembling, but clear. "I live by my work." Bianca folded her arms. "Then you won't mind if we search your bag." The words hit the room like nails driven into the floor. Clara stepped forward. "Miss Bianca, in this house." In this house, Val's voice cut through as he appeared in the doorway, calm but sharp as steel. "There are no searches, no humiliation, and no accusations without proof." The room froze. Helena sniffled her small hand, reaching for Val's thumb as he approached. She grasped it, her sobs easing. Val's gaze swept each face, then fixed on Bianca. Do you have any proof? Bianca lifted her chin. I have logic, and the responsibility to protect this house's image. Image is not a license to humiliate, Val replied, tone unwavering. Everyone return to work. I'll handle this. The crowd dispersed like a tide retreating, leaving Gabrielle at the edge of the rug, clutching her child. She dipped her head in the faintest nod toward Val, then turned quickly, afraid someone would see the tear sliding down her neck. The small staff lounge behind the kitchen was dimmer than usual. Miss Louise set a warm glass of milk and a packet of tissues before Gabrielle. Drink, sweetie. Clara pulled up a chair beside her, asked nothing, simply placed a hand over Gabrielle's and left it there. Helena buried her face into her mother's shoulder and fell asleep from exhaustion. That night, Gabrielle didn't go straight to her rented room. She cleaned the nap room, straightened the paper mobile, folded Helena's blanket. She told no one about the ring. In her head, only one fear circled. Accusation is swift, vindication is slow, and the scratch to one's honor takes the longest to heal. Before the kitchen lights dimmed, Val stepped in. He didn't ask if she was all right. He simply laid a slip of paper on the counter. Tomorrow, 9:00 a.m. study room, then gave a small nod and left. Gabrielle picked up the note, fingertips brushing the still warm ink, and felt her spirit rise slowly, like someone standing after a hard fall. At dawn, a fine rain beaded the lavender leaves. Jim Walker trudged through in his boots, bent down, and spotted something glinting at the soil's edge, the ring. He wiped it quickly on his sleeve. He remembered 2 days ago Bianca had stopped right here to take a photo. He didn't speculate. He just ran the ring clenched tight in his fist, searching for Clara. And the story was about to turn. 9:00 a.m. Study room. Moss-green drapes, dark wood table bookshelves lined straight. Gabrielle carried Helena in right on time. Val stood by the window. Clara handed him the ring with a single sentence. Jim found it by the lavender bed. Val turned the ring between 2 fingers, the gold flashing a thin line across his cheek. He pressed the intercom. Bianca, come to the study. Bianca arrived, blazer not fully straightened. Val didn't sit, nor did he offer her a chair. He held up the ring. Found it in the garden. Anything you'd like to say? Bianca missed half a beat, then tightened her chin. Must have slipped from my pocket while I was near the flowers. But that doesn't change the fact the child shouldn't be here. The only fact that hasn't changed, Val said, is the accusation you hurled at an innocent person in front of the entire staff. His voice dropped half a tone. That damage isn't erased by the word slipped. Bianca didn't apologize. She switched lanes. The press is asking. PR needs a new statement. Val nodded. They'll get a statement in this house's rulebook. He turned to Clara. Write it down. Clara opened her notebook. 1, no searches, no humiliation. 2, call people by their names. Name first, then roll. 3, the nap room is house policy, not an exception. Bianca swallowed hard. You're writing law out of kitchen and garden. Yes, Val answered, because that's where a house learns how to live. Bianca left. Her heels faded past the corner. Val sat down and gestured for Gabrielle to take the opposite seat. He looked straight at her. No detour. About yesterday, I believe you. And I'm sorry that scene happened under my roof. Gabrielle gripped the strap of her cloth bag. Thank you. But they'll always remember I was once suspected. Val shook his head. I'll remember you stood tall under suspicion. And I'll say that again and again until this house remembers it right. Helena stretched out, smacked the table with her little palm, and giggled a faint he. Val laughed with her, then turned to Clara. Send word to all staff the ring has been found. No one is under suspicion. Matter closed. Clara nodded, her eyes glistening. Back in the kitchen, Miss Louise had a pot of cocoa ready. Today, we drink to clean names, she said. pouring into 3 paper cups, the smallest, just for Helena to sniff. Jim poked his head in, waving. "I'll add 2 more rows of lavender," he said. "Smell keeps bad vibes away." Everyone burst out laughing, soft, like fresh bread coming out of the oven. By noon, Val had rolled up his sleeves, washing dishes beside Gabrielle. Soap suds clung to the cuff of his shirt. "You know," he said, "I rarely get things right the first time. But this time, I'll stand here long enough to make right feel normal." Gabrielle handed him a towel, smiling. "Normal sounds more precious than fancy." This afternoon, Val added, "I'll tell the company one thing I've learned at home. We don't split people from their lives. If needed, we'll pilot a kid-friendly corner at headquarters. Not grand, but real." Gabrielle didn't answer in words. She placed 2 slices of orange cake on a plate, slid one toward him. That was her yes. By evening, rosemary scented the breeze. The nap room glowed with warm light. Clara taped the handwritten rules to the inside of the kitchen door, neat letters. No searches, no humiliation. Call each other by name before title. Nap room open, 8/0/18 00. Gabrielle carried Helena slowly down the hall. She paused at the nap room, laid her daughter on the mattress, pulled the blanket up to her belly. The paper mobile spun, scattering round shadows across the wall. Val stood in the doorway, hand gripping the wooden frame. "Sleep, little one," he whispered. Helena answered with a dreamy syllable like "ma" dissolving into the night. At the other end of the house, Bianca opened her laptop, typing a short email to PR office emergency meeting reframe narrative. Proposal separate corporate image from chairman's private life. She leaned back in her chair, eyes wide in the dark. The house no longer moved to her silence. It was learning another language, the language of care, and that language was spreading. Past midnight, the kitchen lamp glowed faint. Miss Louise left a note and a bowl of mixed batter on the counter. "For tomorrow, orange pound cake. Cut while warm and share." Passing by, Val smiled. He placed beside it a slip of paper, bold script, "Home first," then switched off the light. At the far end of the hall, Helena rolled over, brushed her hand against a green paper circle, murmuring, "Bah." Gabrielle cracked the door, caught Val's eyes in the dim. Neither spoke. The house had already spoken. She was trusted. Her child was called by name. And the new rules hung on the kitchen door, black ink lines guarding the dignity of everyone who walked through. The next noon, the elevator carried Val to the 8th-floor glass-walled boardroom overlooking Midtown. Bianca was already seated, her slide deck open to the first page image risk and response plan. The CFO tapped his pen against a notebook. The PR chief stacked a pile of color print clippings. The air was sterile, like the AC had been set too cold. "We need the right terminology," Bianca began, voice measured, every beat precise. "Separate private life from corporate image. Proposed statement: the presence of children in private residences does not reflect company policy. Santoro Holdings bears no responsibility." Val waited until she finished before pulling the mic closer. Tone: "Steady, I don't confuse home with company. But I can't run both places on opposite codes. At home, I've just learned something: we don't split people from their lives. At the company, I'll try the same, small but real." The CFO raised a brow. Costs. Val opened a spreadsheet, added a column with a few keystrokes: cost of dehumanizing, turnover, replacement morale drop, absenteeism. He scrolled right. Pilot kid corner at headquarters, mats, rockers, sanitized toy bins, hours 8/6 clear rules. Goal: retain staff, reduce absence, build loyalty. I'll take responsibility for results. Bianca cut in: "You're turning an emotional story into corporate policy." Val nodded. "Yes, because numbers fail when people are forced to hide their lives. And I'm not speaking in poetry. I'm speaking in the attrition rate of our support staff these last 3 quarters. He pressed a key, the screen filling with a red line climbing upward. The room held a long beat of silence. PR folded his hands. If we do this, the narrative must frame as Santoro prioritizes conditions that help people do their best work. No cheap sentiment. Val nodded. Write it like that. But I'll draft a piece in my own hand, too. Kitchen voice, fewer words, exact meaning. The meeting ended without applause. Only the hallway felt a degree warmer when the door shut. Bianca caught up to Val. You'd trade a stable marriage for a kitchen. Val stopped, looked her in the eye. I want to stand where my voice doesn't have to pretend. If that place isn't between us, then we shouldn't drag it further. Her eyes faltered for a second. We'll talk later, she said, and turned away. That afternoon, Val drove not in a company car, no tinted windows to Gabriel's neighborhood. You said the bus breaks down when it rains. Show me your route. Gabriel hesitated half a breath, then nodded. Helena slept in her car seat, breath rising and falling steady. The street unfolded without polish-peeling fences, a corn stand steaming sweet smoke, a ramshackle shoe repair shop with a hand-painted sign. That's Mrs. Rosa. She lets me delay groceries when I'm short. Gabriel pointed with her chin. And that's Earl fixes phone chargers cheap. This is our people's map. You won't find it on Waze. They stopped at the corner store. Val, for the first time, stood between rows of diapers, measuring package sizes with his fingers like watch straps. Gabriel picked the cheaper pack, eyed the price, then set it back. Val lifted the better one. Invest in sleep. Who's Gabriel laughed. Everyone's, he replied, pushing the cart along, half joke, all truth. She added milk wipes and a tiny bouquet of baby's breath. At the register, the cashier asked, What's the baby's name? Helena. Val answered, then added, A name that gives a house its backbone. The cashier didn't fully understand, but smiled kindly. Gabrielle did, and tucked that smile into her pocket to carry back to the kitchen. Back at the mansion, they walked the last stretch through the garden. Jim watered rosemary and lavender, the herbal scent rising like warm keys on a piano. Clara waved from the door. Nap rooms got sun-warmed blankets now. Who's first to try? Helena blinked awake, babbling. Bah, 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 reaching toward Val. He asked permission with his eyes. Gabriel nodded. The baby nestled into his arms as if the path was already familiar. That night, the kitchen became the living room. Ms. Louise stirred a pot of corn chowder. Clara tore bread alongside. Jim set a bundle of fresh rosemary on the counter. Val sang a clumsy, warm lavender. My love to a children's tune offbeat but sincere. Helena banged her spoon on the table, clapped. Someone snapped a photo of the boss in a rolled-up shirt with dirt on his cuffs, a mother in a green apron, a baby in a red dress behind them, the ANAP room sign with 3 small letters, VGH. Hours later, the photo would ripple through staff group chats. But in that moment, no one thought of networks. They were eating, laughing, breathing like a family. Before leaving the kitchen, Val texted PR a short line, Kid Corner pilot draft rollout send tomorrow. And to Gabrielle, I'll be home early tonight. Save me a slice of orange cake. The reply came as a photo, Helena asleep on her stomach in the nap room, clutching a blue paper circle. Caption, she napped brave. So did her mom. The next day, headlines buzzed across news sites like mosquitoes mockery from some, support from others. PR texted press wants one line short and clear. Val didn't choose a podium or LED screen. He chose the front garden, white-painted iron benches, lavender just taking root. Reporters hovered behind handheld cameras. Val sat without a tie, hands clasped. I understand money didn't teach me how to love, but I can learn. I learned in the kitchen that power isn't for building walls, it's for opening doors. That photo is real. The little girl's name is Helena. Her mother's name is Gabriel. At home, I call people by name, and at the company, I'll call by name the people who keep us standing. What will the company do? One reporter asked. Kid Corner pilots small reel. We'll measure retention, fewer absences, stronger morale. Done by the rules, done safe, done right. And who is the child to you? Another pressed. Val smiled without performance. The first laugh in years that made my house sound like home. At the garden's edge, Gabrielle stood apart, Helena in her arms. Clara nudged her elbow. If you want to speak, speak. Gabrielle stepped forward, 2 paces enough for the mic to catch her voice. No one needs permission to love their own child, she said, eyes on Helena before lifting them to the benches. And work and care can share the same table if someone makes room. A few pens slowed, a few cameras dipped slightly as if less intruding. That afternoon, the lobby of headquarters shifted puzzle mats, fabric book racks, a rocking chair. HR taped the rules. Sign up for slots, no running in hallways, wash hands, quiet hours. The final line, small we call, kids by name. An intern volunteered for story hour. A technician set up a desktop with oversized keys for learning games. Some muttered trend, others smirked waste of money. But in one corner, a mother laid her child down for the first nap of her break without fear. Suddenly, the rest felt small. That night, Santoro's hallway stretched like a runway. Bianca stood at the bend, blazer in her arms, eyes sharp. So she said softly, "You chose the kitchen." "I chose where I can breathe," Val replied. Then, "We're finished." Her words weren't a slammed door but a latch quietly falling. "I wish you freedom with your kitchen. And I wish you find a wall still worth leaning on," he said. Neither smiled. They stood in silence with the courtesy of 2 grown people who had tried and let go. The elevator closed like a stage curtain. Val returned to the kitchen. Miss Louise scrubbed a pot, Clara folded towels. Gabrielle sat at the high stool by the island, Helena drowsy against her shoulder. Val stood opposite, no dramatics. I need to say this, not for the noise outside. He searched for words stripped of polish. Since the day you both walked into this kitchen, I felt an emptiness inside me, filled not with monuments but with breath. I want to walk with you, not to rescue, not with conditions. Truly walk with broken buses, messy counters, dishes, and a child's cries. Gabrielle laid her hand on the counter, eyes steady on him. I don't live magazine cover romance. I know early shifts swapped shifts rewiring the water heater. I can try if we go real with Helena in the middle. If one day you tire of the noise or the smell of the kitchen, say so, I won't be angry. I only need honesty. Val smiled lightly and laid his palm open on the counter. Gabrielle placed her hand on his. Helena's tiny fingers pressed over both, as if sure it was a new game. Miss Louise turned away, dabbing her eyes under pretense of finding a lid. Clara smoothed the kitchen rule sheet on the door, flattening its edges. Late night, a local blog reposted the garden photo with a new caption, "Who pulled up the 3rd chair for a child?" Below, a stranger's comment read, "If a CEO can learn to sit on the floor, maybe he can learn to lift others up." Clara shared the link to the staff group. Val read it, left no emoji, just stood to pour water, setting a glass before Gabrielle as his nod. Before lights out, Jim dropped a fresh bundle of lavender into a glass jar on the kitchen island. The scent mingled with the trace of cake and Helena's milk. At the hall's end, the nap room glowed soft gold. Helena murmured a half word in her sleep, something like, "Paw." Gabrielle looked up. Val held his breath. The child slept on her hand, still stacked atop theirs on the counter, an unspoken vow for the days ahead. A week later, when the kid corner at headquarters had begun to fill with the soft breathing of children napping mid-shift, Val stopped by an old jewelry shop in downtown. The wooden sign read, "Morrow's Fine Jewelry," since 1958. Mr. Morrow, silver-haired, round glasses, hands lined with the wrinkles of time, looked up as Val laid the Santoro family ring on the counter, the same ring that had once shaken the house and then quieted it. "I want to keep its soul, but change its fate," Val said. "Make a simple ring, like the band of someone who works in a kitchen, and with the rest of the gold, please shape a small pendant with the letter H." Morrow studied him for a long moment, as though measuring an invisible line between heart and metal. "You're certain?" certain Val replied, not hiding the thin smile. "Because for the first time, my house knows how to breathe." On the mansion's group chat, messages bubbled like sugar grains. Clara invited everyone to gather in the kitchen Saturday night for Helena's first birthday. Ms. Louise added orange cake with light glazed rosemary for garnish. Jim promised, "I'll bring lavender in a glass jar." Smell of home. Rosa, from Gabrielle's neighborhood, wrote she'd bring family recipe cornbread, and Earl offered cheap string lights that glow warm. The afternoon before, the nap room received a new fabric banner embroidered "Nap Room" by Ms. Louise, edged with purple thread. At headquarters, HR forwarded Val the first thank you email from a mother. "Thank you for one quiet hour today. I finally managed to call the doctor for my child." Val read it, sent it on to Clara and Gabrielle with a single line. One quiet hour can change someone's whole day. Saturday evening, the Santoro kitchen transformed golden string lights draped across the doorway, paper balloons strung in chains, the island covered with a cream linen cloth. Miss Louise set a large orange pound cake in the center, glaze shining faintly, zest dusted fine as rain. Clara carried in chicken soup onions and celery rising together in steam. Jim scattered rosemary and lavender around herbs, meeting butter in a calm harmony. Rosa and Earl lingered awkwardly at the door, their world and this one rarely crossed. Clara walked over, arms open. "This house says come in." Helena wore a white dress with green trim, a pale violet headband in her curls. She climbed from her mother's arms into Val's as if climbing a step she already knew. Gabrielle wore a simple dress Clara had secretly tailored the day before, fitting so perfectly it startled her. Everyone sang happy birthday. Helena clapped the air and giggled in hiccuped bursts. Val raised a hand for quiet. He placed Elisa's notebook on the counter, open to the page titled Orange Cake for Afternoons with Promises. His voice was low, steady. The first time this house heard laughter again was from Helena. The first time I felt less like stone was when Gabrielle sang in the kitchen. I wasn't ready, but I was hungry for that feeling. Today, I want to say this clearly. I want to build life with you two, not as someone granting favors, but as someone joining in. He opened a velvet box. The new ring glimmered without, showmat surface a faint groove, carved across the back like a spoon's stroke against a pan. The language of the kitchen etched in metal. Val looked up at Gabrielle. "Will you stay? Not out of fear, not for gratitude. Stay as someone choosing a home for her heart." No one shouted. The kitchen held its breath. Gabrielle placed Helena in Clara's arms, stepped closer. She looked at the ring, then at Val. "I already stayed," she said, her voice trembling yet steady. "From the day you knelt on the floor to play with my child. I was only waiting for you to say it in your own words." She lifted her hand. The ring slid onto her finger as if it had been waiting all along. Perfect fit. Val drew out the tiny H pendant gold, glinting like a drop of sun. He fastened the thin chain around Helena's neck, Clara supporting the baby's head, Gabrielle steadying her chin. Helena gazed at the letter, flapped her hand into the air as if in agreement. Applause broke out naturally. Miss Louise laughed aloud. Jim whistled softly. Rosa dabbed her eyes with a paper napkin. Earl nodded again and again. No cinematic kiss. Val simply pressed his forehead to Gabrielle's close enough to hear each other's breath. Helena pressed her tiny hand over both their cheeks, 3 people forming a circle. The kitchen breathed again. Soup ladled out. Cake cut while warm and shared at once, just as Elise had written. Night descended like a thin curtain. The nap room turned into a playground of mobiles. Earl tightened a loose window screw with a screwdriver from his pocket. Rosa showed Clara how to swaddle better for deeper sleep. Val leaned against the doorway, watching the 2 worlds blend without seams. On the counter, a napkin carried Clara's earlier note, "Home first." Beneath it, Val had added, "People first." Gabrielle passed by, smiling, and wrote one last word. "Together." When the party ended, dishes were cleared. Miss Louise carefully wrapped 3 slices of cake in parchment for the night shift, the guard, and someone cold out there, she scribbled with marker. Jim stepped out to secure the lights, lavender and rosemary drifting through the vents like a lullaby. Helena drowsy on her mother's shoulder. Val handed Gabrielle a cup of licorice tea. No big speeches. The house had just finished remaking itself from cold facade to warm kitchen. And that very night a photo snapped casually by phone, 3 hands stacked on the countertop, wandered onto a neighborhood blog captioned, "If there's a place to lay your hand down and breathe, perhaps it's the kitchen." The house didn't deny it anymore. It accepted. It smiled in golden light. The next morning, sunlight cut diagonally across the kitchen window. Gabrielle tied up her hair. Helena banged a wooden spoon against the edge of a chair. Val poured coffee. Clara came in with a stack of printed emails, the first feedback from Kid Corner. A technician had written, "Today, my child napped 40 minutes. I finished 3 tough tickets without taking leave." An intern sent a photo of herself reading to 3 kids, caption, "If a company knows to set aside a rug for children, maybe it can also set aside a soft corner for adults." PR pinged. Public opinion's still split. Need one more line, short, clear. Val opened his laptop right on the kitchen island. "We're not doing PR with children. We work better when people are treated as people." He paused, glanced at Gabrielle. She nodded. The kitchen's voice had seeped into the company's voice. That afternoon, the garden became a gathering place. No podium, no big microphones, just a ring of white metal chairs between lavender beds. A few reporters, a few neighbors, a few staff. Val spoke briefly. Power is meant to open doors. Gabrielle added, "Sometimes one quiet hour for a child is a whole day given back to a mother." She held Helena, her eyes neither pleading nor apologizing, just stating truth. Even the hardest faces softened at the corners of their mouths. When the crowd thinned, Val walked with Gabrielle along the wooden fence. Lavender swayed, rosemary scented the air. "I still make mistakes," he said slowly. "I will again. But I don't want to return to the old win-lose games. If I slip, pull me back with your apron." Gabrielle laughed a kitchen laugh. "And if I miscalculate the gas bill, you pull me back with your shirt sleeve." "Deal," he said, holding out his fist. They knocked hands like 2 workers finishing a night shift. That night, the kitchen glowed honey yellow. The nap room was so quiet you could almost hear the stitches on the fabric sign. Helena slept on her stomach, the little H pendant resting on her chest, a point of gold. Val dimmed the light. Gabrielle adjusted her pillow. They stood side by side at the doorway, no words needed. The house had learned a new language, care as a legitimate form of power. On the counter, Elise's notebook lay open. In the margin, faint pencil lines Val had never noticed grew clear under the warm lamp. Serve warm in the afternoon when the house begins to make sense again. He closed the book with a gentle touch, like laying a hand on a sleeping brow. Back in the kitchen, Gabrielle sat on the doorway step, pulling her dress hem over bare feet. Val poured licorice tea, handed her a cup. The garden air was cool enough. Lavender stood guard with its scent. Rosemary whispered promises against forgetting. In the nap room, Helena stirred lips, moving. A small syllable flickered out like a light. Da, da. Gabrielle looked up. Val froze, as though afraid to break the sound. The little girl tried again, longer, da, da, imperfect, unneeded to be perfect. Val covered his eyes, then lowered his hand, smiling wet. Gabrielle leaned her head on his shoulder, exhaling the knot loose. The house has chosen its address, she whispered as if to the lavender outside the frame. Good night, house, Val answered, stepping into the nap room, drawing the curtain just enough. She followed, no longer afraid of the word good night, family. The nap room glowed a soft circle of warmth. Lavender kept the door. Elise's notebook lay still, its gentle constitution delivered. The kitchen board still bore its 3 rules in careful handwriting. No searches, call by name, nap room. 8:18. Beneath, someone had penciled in cut while warm and share. The marble mansion, once cold, was now warmed by cake-sliced, fresh soup ladled evenly, and a new word rooted in a child's mouth. Dada. Val Gabrielle Helena. GH needed no engraving on the facade. They were already carved into the heartbeat of the kitchen. And out in the city, where buses still sometimes broke down in rain, people passed around a short line about $1 million house. There, they practice sitting down so they can stand up together. From a beautiful mistake, the glass and marble estate had reclaimed the warmth of a kitchen. Helena's laughter, the nap room sign, and a ring remade had rewritten the house's law: no searches, call by name, and cut, warm, then share. What about you? What small change would you make at home or at work so that power like Val's learns to open doors? If this story touched you, hit like, share, and subscribe to the channel, so I'll have the motivation to keep telling more.